Have you ever felt like there's something more to life than what you're currently doing?
Do you see the world differently than everyone around you?
Do you ever dream of achieving big things but feel stuck? We're Tiffany and Sid, and we are the Cycle Breakers.
Not long ago, no one believed in us.
The people closest to me said I'd make a great receptionist.
And mine completely abandoned me and left my life.
We started our journey 5 years ago in a basement.
Now, we live our dream life in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. But how did we get here?
We saw a life that was much better than the one we were living.
And broke through the blocks that hold most people back.
Like self-sabotage, crippling self-doubt, and the fear of rejection. But we knew we were made for more, so we bet on ourselves to make the life that we wanted.
And jumped into a life dedicated to breaking old cycles and patterns.
And now we live on 97 acres in the Smoky Mountains. We travel the world speaking on stages, and we help a small army of people break their cycles as well.
We're the Cycle Breakers, and we break through blocks that are holding most people back so we can go live our dream life.
Welcome to the Cycle Breakers Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cycle Breakers Show. Super excited for today's show with you all today as we dive into some of our secrets. One of the questions I know I've been asked a lot, and I know Sid has been asked a lot on his journey, is like, how do you make change so fast? And so we are going to dive into all of that here today. I am one co-host, Tiffany Toombs, and I'm joined by my lovely husband, Sid Clevenger. So
What's
Sid,
up?
let's do this. So we're talking today about how we created our reality. And I think I've lost track of the number of times where people have asked, like, how do you make change so quickly? How, does things just happen so fast for you? Which is actually kind of funny because I feel like a lot of times, and this could just be my lack of patience that I personally have, I feel like things don't happen as fast as I want them to, but to other people on the outside looking in, they're like, wow, you guys make change really fast. And like, you manifest, to use that word, you manifest really quick. So how have things changed for you since you started breaking the cycle? How has that accelerated that manifestation journey for you?
I think for me, it's literally just become like a certainty around, like, okay, this is what I want. And, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get that. Right. And I think there were times before where it would be like, okay, I want this thing, but I don't exactly know the step to take forward. But like going through this kind of journey and following, a very specific process, no matter what it was, right? No matter what the goal was, no matter what our milestone was, no matter what it was that we wanted, we knew that, there were specific things. I knew that there were specific things that if I did, it would usually fall into place. I'm a big believer that, and you know this, but I'm a big believer that, things happen in the right time. And, and there are things that you and I have wanted that we've done or, we've tried to force. And ultimately, like, it wasn't the right time for whatever reason. But then ultimately, I've always found that, for me, it's like, okay, I want this thing. And here's the, steps that I need to follow to get that thing. And it's not, this, tactical, like, if I want to, it's not this tactical like thing. It's like, okay, well, I know I need to do this. Like when it comes to manifestation, I need to look at it. I need to absorb it. I need to, in a way, like make it already part of my reality. I already have it. It's just now I've started the journey of going and get it. And that becomes part of being able to get the things that we've wanted, including where we live now, here in the Smoky Mountains versus where we were. And it's interesting because like, going through this journey, I've, really going through this journey, I've really seen a massive change in the way that I used to live on the day-to-day versus obviously how we live now. And I think that, when people can really see the simple steps that you can take in regards to manifestation, the simple steps that you can take in regards to grabbing, what ultimately became the life that we wanted, you know, like it really becomes, you know, it's a minor shift, I guess, in the head, but it can really become something extremely powerful because then, you know, you become limitless and, you know, there's really not anything in front of you that you can't conquer.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in my healing and cycle breaking journey is that what often feels like a letdown or like a rejection is oftentimes like a redirection or moving us in the direction that we're supposed to go.
Mhm.
I think one of the reasons that you and I are able to make change so quickly, and you know, this started before we were together, but has just
6 years, man.
accelerated since we've met,
Yeah.
is that we don't always need to see. I think we have a trust in God in the universe that if a step appears, right? I always in my mind get this image of like I'm standing in the middle of a lake and like a rock lifts up out of the lake, and that's like the next stepping stone. And a lot of people will go, well, what if I take that step and then nothing happens? And
Yeah.
so people hesitate to take that step, even though it's the only step that they can see, and they stay where they're at. And for me, I always take that step trusting that it came up for a reason. So, you know, when I lost everything in Australia, the next step that I could see was to move home. And I was terrified to start my coaching business. I mean, at that time, for background for everybody, I had been in business with two narcissists. Two of my business partners were true narcissists for 5 years at that point. And their feedback to me really solidified and validated this belief that I had that I was a good workhorse, but I wasn't like the business smart person. So I was really good. I was, you know, I was lucky to be on the board of directors and an owner in these businesses because I brought the work ethic and because, you know, I could take their big ideas and make them a reality. But I wasn't good in terms of, you know, the finances or the thinking of innovative ways forward or things like that. Like that wasn't what I was good at, according to them. And so when I came back, I really like felt my soul calling me to start my business, but I had this intense fear that I couldn't do it, right? Like I believed that that's just I was not good at that. And so that, you know, I had this fear. But whenever I would feel the need to like look for a job, I would literally go on indeed.com and I could feel my soul dying. It was like my soul would be like, no, you can't do this. And so I was like, okay, well, I just need to keep going with my business then. And
Yeah.
obviously that worked out. And so I think when we really start to trust the next step and know that it's not always going to be easy, I think one thing that I hear from a lot of people is, well, if this is what I was supposed to be doing, then it would be easy. And a lot of, you know, people in the personal development world will say, oh, this is just God testing you. This is just the universe testing you. I don't believe that either. I don't believe we're tested, but I believe we're given an opportunity to be the person that we say we want to be, right? So in the moment when I'm being challenged, I can choose to throw in the towel, or I can choose, you know, there have been times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for a walk, you know, tomorrow, or a run tomorrow. Or yesterday we had this hiking family day planned and I was super excited for the hike, and we woke up and it was like raining.
Yeah.
Now the
Pouring rain
forecast said the rain was
and
going to
muddy.
stop by the time that we were scheduled to get to the hike. And so I was like, okay, we'll still go. And there was a part of me, I mean, we had a sleepless night the night before with Chad. He was
Yeah.
up half the night. So we were
Buffalo too.
like
Yep.
zombies. And it would have been really easy to be like, no, let's just go home and let's not do the hike, and let's, you know, just stay in this pattern of like, we'll go home, we won't be productive, we'll sleep half the day, blah, blah, blah. But we didn't do that, right? We were given the opportunity to choose, like, we said we're doing this hike today. We value our family time, so we're going to show up as those people. And when we start making decisions not for how we feel right now and not for who we are right now, then things change.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned a couple of things in there that's really been a part of my journey, but it's like, I think a lot of times it becomes really easy to like look at the end goal. Like when we were, like when we wanted to move here or when we wanted to move to the Smokies, right? Like that's a big thing. And like a lot of people that are listening or watching this might be like, well, I want to completely change my life, right? Completely change my, we were watching Joe Dispenza last night. So completely change my personality, completely change my way of being, completely change how I, show up in this world, or my identity is a big one, right? Completely change my identity. Because there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this. I know I've been there, that was like, I don't even know who I am. And when I went through my betrayal with my family, that became a big, big block that was like going through my head. Is like, I don't have my family anymore. I don't know who I am. My identity has always been tied to my family. Well, one thing I know that has really helped me is like, yeah, like there's going to be some days, there's going to be times like when we want something big, we have to take a look at the mountain that's in front of us, right? And we have to be able to take this step toward that mountain, or take that step forward. And we're not going to be able to see, the mountains behind it, the goal behind it, right? Like the Smoky Mountains was behind many decisions and many steps, right? Like it wasn't just one massive step forward and we woke up one day and here we were. I think we had to trust the process of like, okay, so the first thing we need to do is this, the second thing we need to do is this, but everything was geared toward getting here. And we didn't know this place even existed. It was just a matter of like, okay, well, I know that we need to move. I know that we need to be in a transitional period. I know that we need to, get out of Texas, right? And sometimes, like it was literally a process that we had to do. But one thing that I learned, I forget who it was that said it, but it was like when we can take the first step, it gives us a little bit more clarity around, because we're able to see that one step further. And then when we take another step, we can see another step further, and so on and so forth. And the game isn't really trying to take a massive leap and hope you don't fall. The game is taking one step at a time, steadily, and then being able to see further and further and further, which to me was getting clarity further and further and further. And then really after doing it for just 30, 60, 90 days, looking back and being like, whoa, like I've came a long way. And, it's happened with how we moved here. It's happened with our businesses. It's happened with our way of life. Like it happened with me last year when I was riding my bike, and the first time I rode my bike, I think it was like 6.5, 7 miles. And I came back and laid on the pavement for like a half an hour because I was so like drenched. I was just like, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. Like, how do you all ride a bike for 50 miles? It doesn't make any sense. But then it was like, just a couple months later, I did my first 50-mile ride. And it wasn't that.
Hold on though. What's funny about that is that after that first ride, our neighbor who you were riding with was like, okay, so next time we're going to go like 10 miles. And you were like, no, I researched it. And online it said I should only ride my bike for 10 minutes a day for X period of time.
2.5 miles a day.
Increase by like, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important to note, because people will look up on the internet and you can find literally any theory to back you up, to back up
any which will give you the conviction for what
you can't do it.
Yeah.
So, and then what's funny about us moving here is like, again, people were like, their heads were spinning with how quickly we did it, because you and I talked about it and we were kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe, moving to Kentucky, staying with your family for a little while isn't ideal with a new kid, but it's probably the best option that we have to get there. So let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it was, and it wasn't like it was a snap of the finger either. Like you and I, this is what we want. What is the best step moving forward? And I think when we get to that step, I don't know if you've ever went through this, but it's like you get to that step and then you realize that it's you holding yourself back because you're not.
Well, I don't even know after we had that conversation in Texas, I don't even know if you were like 100% like committed in your head yet, but I just started taking pictures and putting stuff on Facebook Marketplace. And like that same night that we had that conversation, somebody came to pick up like a desk or something of ours,
Mhm.
and you were like, oh wow, okay, well, I guess we're really doing this.
Yeah.
So I just want to share a quote. It's like a mini poem. It won't take long. But when I first started my healing journey, this quote was something that I was taught, and I had it written on my mirror for a long time. It's now the screenshot or the lock screen on my phone that I come back to frequently because it encompasses what we're talking about so well. So until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would have never have otherwise occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manners of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamed would come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. And I think that really just encompasses where we create so fast is that we make a decision and we commit to it and we just take a step forward. And what all law of attraction, what all universal laws really encompass is, when you take the first step, the universe is going to show up for you 10 times. I remember I said this in one of my trainings a couple years ago, in one of our mastermind programs, and somebody that was in the training was like, oh, that's not really true though, because this person had been an exotic dancer at one point in their life. And they said, I was an exotic dancer and I quit because I didn't want that life anymore. And we were so broke that we had nothing. And like people from church were like bringing us food and bringing us all this stuff. And I'm like, but can't you see, like, the universe God still delivered for you there? Like, you decided, I'm not going to do this lifestyle anymore that's degrading and negative. And so then while you were financially figuring things out, the universe, like God, still had people providing you food and the things that you needed to live. But we have to take the first step. And I think sometimes people become so scared of the what ifs, especially the what if it doesn't work or what if I fail. I mean, we could look at the moving to Kentucky as a complete failure, but we ended up on 97 acres in the Smoky Mountains. We have amazing neighbors on both sides that we love. I have started foraging and my garden and making herbal tinctures that people in the community are buying and wanting. And wanting me to teach them how to do. I'm still like figuring it out, but we've got people coming over to learn how to make dandelion jelly with me. And you've started cycling and discovered a love for hiking and camping. And so I think sometimes we have to readjust our expectations and even let go of the expectations and just trust, I'm going to follow the steps that appear. And I'm going to trust that where it takes me is where I'm supposed to be.
I mean, that's faith, and you can't teach faith, in my opinion. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't teach someone trust or faith. That's something they kind of have to pull a guard, or, you know what I mean? Like, eventually it has to happen. And eventually, for me, like, you can hold on to it as long as you want, but the harder you hold on to it, the more pain that I have. When I held on to, because ultimately I wasn't holding on to not having faith. I was holding on to fear, and I was holding on to what felt safe. Even if it was pain felt safe. Trauma felt safe. And I get that, because when I was going through trauma, it was all I knew. So, like, you sit there and you're like, okay, well, I might take a little bit of pain, but at least it's what I can expect. Instead of even looking on the other side of things and being like, but I deserve not to live in pain. There's a whole other world out there and a whole other, universe and a whole other side to all of it, that all it takes is pulling the veil out from your face, having a little bit more clarity, a lot of times taking one step, which we talk about getting 1% better every day, and literally just, just saying, I'm going to trust this. I don't exactly know what's going to happen. I don't exactly know where I'm going to end up, but I do know that I'm taking a step forward instead of staying still. And I think like, when it came to like what you were talking about, just a simple thing like the hike, that, an example of like everyday life, I think with all the decisions that we make, and to be fair, it's not like every single decision we make works out right perfectly the first
No,
time. It doesn't. But like when it
I'd
came to
say
the
most of
hike,
them don't, but they lead us where we need to go.
so like with the hike, like I think the reason we got up and did it was because of the decision it was a decision we made. We're going to do it. Obviously, we understand that if there's lightning, we're not going to go. Like if there is something telling us not to go, that's one thing. But like, like we got up and yeah, it was raining. But we also were like, rain's going to stop. We had faith the rain was going to stop. Right. And
We're
even if it's
tired,
raining a little
and we're
bit,
like, that's why God created coffee.
yeah. Yeah, 2 cups of coffee later. But and I think like it wasn't like we were, there was no like, well, we're gonna go if there was, we're going. And I think at the end of the day, like even though it was 2 o'clock, like the words that you were saying and like the mindset that I had was like, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna go. It wasn't, oh well, I'm gonna wait and I'm gonna see like what the weather does, like, and I'm almost like telling myself I'm not gonna go before I decide not to go. Right. And I used to do that on the bike. Right. I used to do that when I was cycling. It was just sort of like I would kind of make an excuse and almost manifest something happening right before it would even happen because truly in my heart I didn't want to go. Right. Or I was too scared to go, or whatever. So I think like when it came to that decision that we made, it really, it's faith and it's trust in like the decision that you were making, but it's also okay, so like this is what's happening. I'm doing it. There's no stopping me from doing it because I'm doing it. And I know things are going to come up because things are supposed to come up. Because when massive change is about to happen, usually evil is going to come in and try to stop it. And it's happened for me. I can't tell you how many times. But like, again, when we make that decision and we have it in our head that it's going to happen no matter what comes up, the decision becomes a lot easier because we already start doing it in our head. It already starts happening. That journey has already started. The journey doesn't start when we started the hike. The journey started the night before when we said, we're going, and it doesn't matter what happens, we're going. And I think like that can be a huge thing for a lot of people because it comes back to the decision that we make and it comes back to our thoughts, which, as you know, leads to emotions, leads to decision. So, or behavior in the decision. So, I mean, like, I think that's what's so important is like this starts up here in the little 6 inches that we have up here between our ears. And, when we can develop a habit when I developed a habit to be able to just make decisions and see those decisions through on a consistent basis, manifestation became very easy because it literally is just triggering the start point, and the start point's a thought and a decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, the major takeaway here is make a decision and commit to it. A lot of people, well, if I get a good night's sleep tonight, then I'll. If it's convenient for me tomorrow, then I'll.
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling, and like, there's times when the decisions that we make are profoundly uncomfortable. Like, it moving to Kentucky and then to Tennessee, we had no idea. Well, I especially had no idea what to expect because I'd never lived anywhere in the States but Texas. And so I think the biggest thing is like, it's okay to feel uncomfortable, but use it as like a yield sign. Like, hey, have you looked both ways before crossing the street? Instead of like, no, don't cross the street.
Yeah.
It's not a sign to stop. It just means that you care about what you're doing. And you just need to make sure you have all the information. But even then, that doesn't mean stop and wait until you have all the information. It's just, hey, like, look both ways before you cross the street and then go. Like, make the decision and then take the first step. because
Yeah,
taking
I mean, the more you sit and stew is really that's evil getting, it's evil getting in the way. And when I say evil, I mean, what I mean by that is that is the opposite of the decision that you want getting in the way. That's your self-sabotage, that's your block, that's, whatever it is that you're fighting getting in the way. So I think like, you get to a point where you say, this is what I want, and I'm going to start walking toward it. I'm going to start the journey. I'm going to go. I'm not going to sit here, in this block and in this pain anymore. I mean, I think going through the things that I've been through, and I know you've been through this as well, like, and we had these really, really bad thoughts. For me, it was suicide. For me, it was, ending it all or just walking away from everything and completely exiting, at some points last year and just saying, this is too much. I can't do it. I think that at the end of the day, it's not I never really wanted any of those things. I had to understand that, and what I learned about myself and what I've, talking to many other people that was in that situation, those similar situations, I found that it wasn't me or them that really wanted to do that. All we really wanted was we wanted the pain to go away, but we didn't know how. So we convinced ourselves that that was the only way. And then we started living as if that was the only way, which is a huge spiral south. And, like that is when things can get really, really dark. But I think at the end of the day, right, like to get the pain to go away begins with obviously our thoughts, but through those thoughts was faith and taking steps and movement. And movement doesn't have to be with your feet all the time. Movement can be in a change of a thought, which is going to help be the change of emotion. But at the end of the day, like it's the movement of going toward what it is that we want that is going to begin to install that change. And I guess the reason I'm talking so scientifically right now is because we watched Joe Dispenza last night. So, but that was really like, that's how the brain works. And then it's not instant. It's not going to happen overnight. But what is going to happen is again, Joe Dispenza, you're going to start kind of moving toward the beginnings of changing the way your brain and your body connect to one another, and ultimately changing, is it the I can't even say the word. That the what?
Physiological.
That physiological. That's a big word. We're in the South, remember? So that's a big word for me. But yeah, changing the way that the body, ultimately what that word means from what I took was, changing the way the body and the mind work together. And then when they're in sync, one thing I learned through, a lot of, I guess you could call it Eastern medicine, whether you want to call it Native American medicine men, whether you want to call it yogis, whatever you want to call it. But from what I've learned is that our body feels at its best when it's in balance. What we're always striving for is in balance. And part of that balance is, our brain and our body chemistry. And when we're in balance is usually when we are optimum. And from what I've found, and to take that is taking the change and the movement within the brain. That's where it starts. It starts with the thought and it starts with the decision. And once you have that decision, it becomes a conviction. And that's how I've learned to manifest everything that we currently have and are currently doing, and the thousands of people at this point that we've helped and all of that stuff, because it all started as a thought. And that thought then ultimately became a conviction. And the conviction is something we need to live now on a day-to-day basis. At least, I live on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. So where this all starts, your transformation journey, it starts with deciding, taking that first step, even if you can't see the rest of the steps ahead, just take that first step and trust that the next step will appear, or that where you are supposed to end up is where you'll end up.
And just so people know, I don't know if we've really broken it down any. You might have heard us talk about the 7-day nervous system reset, which is the place to start. But without getting too geeky, can you just sort of go over like a basic, okay, like, we talked about thoughts in this episode, the 7-day nervous system reset, which we talked about here on this podcast, is where to go. What would be, like, if you could just give like this is why this is where to start. And like, you're the one that put this together. So I'm definitely going to let you just kind of like, short and sweet to sort of break down. This is why it starts, and this is what helps change the thoughts and change the chemistry in the body and the brain, so that we start feeling better, we get rid of the pain, and ultimately are able to have more clarity toward walking toward what we want.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first step is to make the decision. The 7-day nervous system reset is going to help you stay in that decision and follow it through. Because like we said, it's not going to be comfortable. You're making change when you're programmed to stay the same. So we're going to give you the exercises that you need to help you stay the course, to stay with the decision so that you can make the change that you're looking for. So all you have to do to get that is go to resetmysystem.com/reset, or the link will be in the show notes below.
Yeah, and I think, just as sort of like a brief summary from what Tiffany has taught me with that is ultimately the nervous system is an electronical circuit. So that electronical circuit's directly tied to the brain. I was actually talking about this last weekend with people when I was at an event in Orlando. And they were asking me about the nervous system. How does that have anything to do with my thoughts and my feelings? Well, it has everything to do with your thoughts and your feelings, because when it's in chaos, which is where a lot of people that might be listening to this that are wanting to break the cycle but don't know how, right, in their own life, the nervous system has to be regulated, and the electrical circuit has to be in a position to where we can have clarity and move forward. And I think like that's been such a huge, having that understanding for me has been such a huge step forward, because we do have tools and ways that we can regulate and reset that. And that's what the 7-day nervous system is. 7-day nervous system reset is.
Absolutely. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are super excited to hear what decisions you make, what commitments you make to moving forward so you can break the cycle, and then looking at, how the nervous system reset helps you get there. So
we're excited to hear about what it, you do that for one day and you'll feel something. I mean, we've had hundreds of people that come to us and they're like, whoa, like I just did the first exercise. It took me 2 minutes and I feel a lot different than I did 2 minutes ago. So I think like that's how powerful this can be, because again, it's tied directly to the brain.
Yeah. I mean, an avalanche starts with two pieces of, two snowflakes coming together and starting that ball rolling. So just take one step at a time.
Yepers.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
Super excited. See you all in the next episode.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Cycle Breakers, where this channel is all about helping people clear out the blocks that are holding them back. We have a free gift for you, and that free gift is called our 7-day nervous system reset. The 7-day nervous system reset is where we help you calibrate your nervous system so you can go out there and control your emotions and start to take more control of your life, helping clear the blocks that are holding you back so you can start stepping into that dream life. It's absolutely free, and you can grab it down here in the description. And remember, our friends, let's dare to heal.